Quorn's Drumming World Know Your Subdivisions tutorials video series. This is the first part in a 5-part video series that will deal specifically with counting and singing rhythms. My name is Quorn. I am also known as the Quorn, which is my stage name. Today we're going to start with the basics. Counting with Konnokols, which is a South Indian term for singing rhythms. A language of the vocabulary of rhythmic phrasing, if you will. We're going to learn the South Indian Konnokol as well as a Western version which I've developed. And we will do this using the subdivisions from 8th to 36th notes. So why know your subdivisions? Well, if time signatures are the canvas, then subdivisions are the paint we use with which to create the artwork. So it's really crucial to have a thorough knowledge of your subdivisions and how to apply them. This will give you a broad and tasteful repertoire of rhythmic phrasing that you can then apply to all musical styles. We will use two mediums to achieve this, a written medium and an oral medium or system of counting. The oral medium is primary because it really and directly enables us to internalize rhythmic phrases using our voice, which is our primary or root instrument. I always say, if you can count or sing a phrase, then you can play it. But if you can't sing or count a phrase, no amount of reading will enable you to be able to play it. Singing and counting rhythm, therefore, in my opinion, is the first process any aspiring musician should engage in his or her musical journey. South Indian Konnokol is probably the most complete system of rhythmic phrasing existing today as a holistic language. There is no Western equivalent. However, my aim is to teach within a Western drumming context, so I developed specifically a Western Konnokol in order to address the ambiguities and deficiencies that exist within our tradition of counting rhythm. Just as Indian Konnokol languages relate to their specific drums, so we also need a system that relates specifically to our own Western tradition of drumming. However, it is still really worthwhile to study and learn South Indian Konnokol because it crosses over powerfully into a Western context, not just for drummers, but for all Western instrumentalists. Today we will learn both of these Konnokols, which we will apply in different and varied ways in part 2, 3, 4 and 5 of this series. So getting back to subdivisions, what are they? Let's approach subdivisions through Western music theory, which extends into our notation system first developed through Gregorian chant. Dealing with choirs in the 13th century and thinking about a written transcribing methodology for this choral music, the music context was more concerned with the length of a note rather than its rhythmic structure. Indeed, Gregorian chant is really not known for any kind of syncopated or complex rhythmic phrasing. Therefore, our notation system developed on the basis of how long a note lasts, not where it is in time. How long a note lasts and where it ends actually determines where the next note will begin in the timeline. The timeline was created with 5 horizontal lines in order to be able to determine the pitch of notes called a staff. And the staff was broken up by vertical lines which created little boxes or sections which we call bars. So if a bar is taken up completely with sound, if the whole of the bar is filled, then we have a whole note because the whole of the space in the bar has been filled. If we then divide the space in two equal sections, we have two minims which take up the whole of the space. If we then divide the bar into four equal sections, we have four quarter notes or crotchets which take up the whole space of the bar. Quarter notes became the foundation on which we built our time signatures, the most common being 4/4 time, basically meaning a bar in which there are four notes, each note having the value of a quarter note, which we would just simply count 1, 2, 3, 4. So the subdivisions were created by further dividing the quarter note pulse. If we were in 4/4 time, 4 quarter notes per bar, and we further divided that in half or by 2, we would then have 8 notes in the bar, which we've simply called eighth notes, and we would count thus: 1 and, 2 and, 3 and, 4 and. If we took a bar of 4/4 time with 4 quarter notes and we divided each quarter note by 3, we would then have 12 notes per bar, which would give us 12 notes. If we divided a bar of 4/4 time with 4 quarter notes and we divided each quarter note by 4, that would give us 16 notes in that bar, which would give us 16th notes. So if we divided the quarter notes by 5, we would have 20th notes. If we divided them by 6, we would have 24th notes, by 7th, 28th notes, by 8th, 32nd notes, and by 9, 36th notes. And this is how the subdivisions have been created. There is one other subdivision that we can create, and that is by playing every second note of the triplet or 12th note subdivision. And we can do so starting on or off the beat, and this will give us 6 even notes across 4 quarter note pulses, or 1 bar of 4/4, which traditionally we call these notes quarter note triplets or crotchet note triplets, and I just refer to them simply as 6 notes. These 9 subdivisions and their varied applications make up 90% of all the musical content of all traditions on the planet today. These 9 subdivisions will be the focus of this series, and today we will start by learning how to sound both Konnokols in terms of the South Indian Konnokol and also the Western Konnokol I've created, and we will do so for subdivisions from 8th notes to 36th notes. The 6th note subdivision, which I just mentioned, will be phrased and sounded as the same as the 24th note subdivision. So we're going to start learning the syllables for the South Indian Konnokol. So again, today we're just learning these syllables for both the South Indian and the Western Konnokol. We're not going to run any processes. All of that will be done in the subsequent videos. This has just been a informative tutorial to teach you these syllables and give you some background information relative to the subdivisions, where they came from, and what we're going to do with them, and why it's very important to be very familiar with them in order to diversify and expand your rhythmic musical vocabulary. So okay, now on your screen you can see the syllables. So the group of 2, simply, so if for a group of 1 it would just be ta, but or na, and sometimes it's even just a dot if it's used as a rest. But we're mainly concerned with the groups of 2 up to 9. So you can see the syllables there. So the first one for 2 is ta-ka. Ta-ka, 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 ta-ka. For 3, ta-ka-ta. takata, 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 takata. Or you can sometimes say takita, 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 takita. Obviously, there are many variations. This is just a basic beginning. There's a whole bunch of variations that are just based on different syllables, because sometimes different syllables sound better in different contexts. And also there's a whole bunch of variations which are based on using res within the group. We're up to group 4. For 4, taketemi, 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 taketemi. For 5, tatiketatom, 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 tatiketatom. For 6, takatemi. Some people say demi, or they use a D syllable instead of a T syllable. My teacher was never so much concerned with exactly what syllables I used, or whether I varied off, maybe what was completely traditional. Again, there's many different ways, but all he was concerned about was the fact that I really, sang them correctly, in time, in feeling. The syllables, these could be replaced with any other syllable, but in this instance, obviously, these syllables kind of roll off the tongue in a way that makes it easier to sing and sound. So 6 was taka-taka-temi, 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 taka-taka-temi. 7, taka-ta-taka-temi, 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 taka-ta-taka-temi. 8, taka-temi, taka-juna, taka-temi, taka-juna, taka-temi, taka-juna. Takatemi, takajuna, takatemi, takajuna, takatemi, takajuna, takatemi, takajuna. And 9, takatemi ta takatemi, 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 takatemi ta takatemi. So there you have it. These are the basics, South Indian Konnokol, from groups of 2 up to 9. So in the South Indian system, each grouping is given a name, and that grouping can stand for a subdivision itself, or it can just be a group of notes within any given subdivision, and in their counting systems, numbers are never used. The syllables themselves stand for the 3, or are a language that corresponds directly to the 3 main drums of South India, one of which is the ghatam, which is a clay pot, the other is the mridangam, which is a double-headed drum, and the other is a kanjira, which is a small frame drum. Okay, we're ready to proceed now and learn the Western Konnokol that I developed. It's not completely obvious at the outset, the use of this Konnokol, but as we progress in this series, you will see why I developed this, because it has a very specific Western kind of application relative to the drum kit. It has its place. The Southern Konnokol works for some things, and this Konnokol can work just as well for other things. Of course, they are interchangeable in different ways of running them, but you will see very specifically how the Western Konnokol has a specific function relative to drum kit playing later on in the tutorials. The Western Konnokol makes use of numbers, and fundamentally every number marks a quarter note pulse. So that's another way that when we're running them, you'll be able to see how using alternate phrasing or starting to sing different groupings over different subdivisions you'll see very clearly because the numbers will get displaced. But we will see this in coming lessons. So you can see it on the screen now. So basically, in terms of a Western concept, this relates directly to a particular subdivision. With the South Indian Konnokol, it really just means a grouping. It can be a subdivision, it can be a grouping within a subdivision. It's not defined as such, but the way that we think of it in terms of the way that it's been conceived of relative to everything I explained before, relative to subdivisions and music notation and how these subdivisions evolved conceptually, they're definitely seen, these groups, as a particular subdivision. So we have 8th and 12th notes, 16th notes, 20th notes, 24th notes, 28th notes, 32nd notes and 36th notes. I've actually given these names using the American system. Some people kind of, we use 16th notes, but then when we relate to 20th notes, we say quintuplets, and with triplets, there's no kind of formulated or agreed upon system in terms of even naming, yet alone counting all these subdivisions. And I just felt that utilizing the American system of just using a subdivision number for each subdivision relative to how it had been divided and how many notes ended up being in the bar. The 8th notes, I've stuck to the traditional way of counting them, and if we're counting one whole bar of 4/4, then obviously that's going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and they're a doublet, in other words a group of 2. Triplets, a group of 3, so a whole bar, I'm using 1 IO. So if we were to count a whole bar, it would be 1 IO, 2 IO, 3 IO, 4 IO, 1 IO, 2 IO, 3 IO, 4 IO. I've kept the same Konnokol that's standard in most drumming methods of counting 16th notes or quadruplets, and that would be 1 E and A. So if we're counting a whole bar, 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and relative to quintuplets or 20th notes, 1 O E and 1 O E and 2 O E and 3 O E and 4 O E and 1 O E and 2 O E and 3 O E and 4 O E and relative to sextuplets or 24th notes, 1 I O E and 1 I O E and 2 I O E and 3 I O E and 4 I O E and 1 I O E and 2 I O E and 3 I O E and 4 I O E and relative to septuplets, 28th notes, 1 I O E and a C, 1 I O E and a C, 2 I O E and a C, 3 I O E and a C, 4 I O E and a C, 1 I O E and a C, 2 I O E and a C, 3 I O E and a C, 4 I O E and a C. 32nd notes, octuplets, 1 I O E and a CJ, 1 I O E and a CJ, 2 I O E and a CJ, 3 I O E and a CJ, 4 I O E and a CJ, 1 I O E and a CJ, 2 I O E and a CJ, 3 I O E and a CJ, 4 I O E and a CJ. 36 notes, or nonuplets, sorry. 1 I O E and a CJT, 1 I O E and a CJT, 2 I O E and a CJT, 3 I O E and a CJT, 4 I O E and a CJT, 1 I O E and a CJT, 2 I O E and a CJT, 3 I O E and a CJT, 4 I O E and a CJT. Okay, so that concludes the Konnokol. I'd just like to conclude by saying, learn the Konnokol such that you can sing, count, or speak it fluently without thinking in more of a feeling way, so that you don't have to think about it, so that when we move on to the next lessons you can really make best use of those to expand your vocabulary. What we will be doing in the following tutorials is we will be taking all these different groupings and learning to sing them over each subdivision. And we'll do so over a hand clap, so that we've always got a reference to time within our own internal clock, so to speak. That hand clap will be just over quarter notes to begin with. And then we will also run the same exercises, but we will do so over some Indian claves. Once we are able to sing all these rhythms over a standard quarter note pulse and the different claves, we'll then be able to approach this and move on to the drum set and see how we can utilize this relative to actually playing drums. I also recommend that you have a look at my blog on www.thequornsdrummingworld.com. Just go to my blog menu, and there are two posts. One is called Konnokol, What Is It? And the other is called Rhythmic Phrasing, Two Fundamental Approaches. Have a read of those, and that will also serve you well for the lessons that are coming. So I want to thank you for watching, and just encourage you to hang in there. This is just the basics, but we'll be doing lots of really exciting stuff in the tutorials coming soon. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon. My name is Alan Quorn, the Quorn on the Quorn's Drumming World.